I think that's some of the most beautiful music ever written. That's Claude Debussy's Clair de Lune. It's this well-known, famous, beautiful, beautiful piece of music. And some people, I will confess, think it sounds a little saccharinely sweet, a little too sweet, a little bit too sentimental. But I think one note saves it from being too mushy, just too sweet. It's one note that comes near the end of the piece and it changes everything. After hearing that lovely, peaceful sort of introduction, it goes ups and downs. There's faster parts, slower parts, but it comes back to that theme with one important difference at the very, very tail end when Debussy does this. And it's that note in the chord that changes the whole feel of it. It's beautiful and haunting and surprising and unexpected because the first time we heard that chord, it didn't have that sore thumb sticking out. It was just light like that. But once you add in that extra C flat, what music folks call an accidental, it changes things. It would take something away important from the music if you removed that, what might sound like a sour note. It needs that richness, that complexity. Accidentals in music are anytime you've got a note that isn't supposed to be in that key signature, right? In certain keys, there's these sharps and these flats and these naturals. And every so often, pretty frequently, actually, a composer will put in a note that doesn't fit exactly according to the rules with the key signature. It's called an accidental, and later those notes go away and you keep playing in the key it's written in. But you need something like that stands out, that fits in the music, but isn't really of the same key signature. I think of that chord when I hear Jesus say in what we call the high priestly prayer of Jesus from John 17, he prays for his followers to be in the world even though they aren't of the world, even though they don't belong to the world. It's this really interesting moment. We get this window into what's going on in Jesus' heart on his last hours with his disciples. Every year we get to hear snippets from these words Jesus prays to God hours before his own arrest and betrayal and crucifixion. So Jesus, instead of primarily praying about himself, dear God, I don't want to go through the suffering. Dear God, could you find another way? There are moments for that. But here Jesus is thinking about the people he loves, his community of followers, what we come to call the church or the beloved community. And Jesus prays that we'd hold on to that characteristic of being blue notes, sour notes in the ears of the rest of the world, and yet ones that fit in and yet stand out at the same time. It's a difficult dance for us to do, to be the followers of Jesus. It's difficult because it means that we are immersed in the messiness of the world. We aren't called to withdraw ourselves to go live in some separate wilderness or pull away from the rest of the world, keeping ourselves untouched in our moral purity and self-righteousness. It means we're meant to be right in the midst of the world in all of its messiness. It means that we recognize we as Jesus followers are also this weird mix of being both saint and sinner, of being both beloved and also stinkers at the same time, and that we're called to be different, but we are also living right in the messiness of the world around us, and that there's no getting around either half of it. Sometimes Christianity makes the mistake on either side there. Sometimes we lose all sense of being different from the culture around us, from the world around us, and we no longer have the ability then to speak up and to say, hold on, we're called to be different, to love our neighbors in a world full of meanness and selfishness. We're called to be generous in a world full of stinginess. We're called to be peaceable in a world full of violence and war. We're called to be different and distinctive that way, the way Jesus talks about us as salt for the earth, or as light for the world, or as yeast that is this small, different kind of presence. And on the other hand, sometimes Christians focus so much on being so different, so other, that we think we have to withdraw from the world, almost like playing the sour note without the rest of the chord behind it. But that by itself doesn't do anything. You don't even know that's distinctive because you don't have the rest of the chord around it. This is our calling, sisters and brothers, is to be that surprising note that is only surprising when it's held up against the rest of the chord. And together, something important, something powerful happens. Our distinctive presence calls out, no, there's another way. In the world's violence, we can be people of peace. In the world's hatred and bigotry and apathy, we can be people of love. In a world full of rottenness and selfishness, we can be people who embody Jesus' kind of love. But it requires being in the world like an accidental in the music, just like that. There are times when Christian voices say what they really want is for Christians to be running the show. We should be in charge, managing everything, dictating for everybody. That feels like rewriting the key signature and losing our distinctive difference, the way of being on the outside, of being that minority report sort of voice. That's what we are meant to be, this sort of subversive outlier voice, always pointing ahead to God's future, always calling us to Jesus' way of life and never quite fitting in. The goal isn't for how to make everybody think Christians should fit in, but for us to own our weirdness, not to dictate that others be like us so much as to own our weirdness, to be that note in the chord that brings beauty but also piques people's interest and grabs their attention. I wonder what it would look like in the course of this week for us to be those kind of people who are those unexpected accidentals in the music that surprise people, that catch them off guard, and that maybe change the world because of it. That's what Jesus prayed his followers would be. So join us for that conversation this coming Sunday, for the seventh Sunday of Easter, as we continue to seek out what it looks like to be accidentals in the music.